name is Frieda Morrison. I'm the director of Scots Radio, the presenter and the producer, and I'm the director of the Doric Film Festival, and I'm also the chair of the new Doric board that was appointed and constituted just over a year ago. When I was first appointed as a radio producer with BBC in Scotland, the education department, over 30 years ago, I phoned my father to tell him the good news. His reply was typical of the region honed by generations accustomed to digging ditches and carrying boulders for the parks, the fields, around the croft at Tucher. My father replied, "Aye, but fan are you going to get, a real job?" And after 30 years with the BBC, I'm sure he never really got the idea that speaking for a living would ever be considered working. But history repeats itself, and here I am back again trying to explain that speaking is my job and broadcasting is my trade. In this case, speaking and broadcasting in my own language, North East Scots, or Doric. That is my language. North East Scots, or Doric, is called new. Doric is a vibrant branch of the Scots language. Now, don't get me wrong. As somebody who has spent most of their working years communicating to the nation in English, I'm hardly the aim to suggest we suddenly ditch the English language and start to speak Scots. But I happen to believe strongly that a nation that is proud of its language is a stronger nation, and a stronger nation is a more prosperous nation. But let history be the boat and nae the anchor. We have a job to do. But I need to lead you gently back down the path of my background and hopefully give you an insight to far I am new and fit why I've come to certain conclusions. Right. I am the granddaughter of a poor but honest crofter for the Tucher How outside Cummingston in Buchan, Aberdeenshire. An area straight out of the pages of the novel Sunset Song, the nation's favourite book. The North East is made up of various landscapes, from the coastline to the wide-open parks of Buchan, the big sky and the barley fields, to Donside with the bonny rolling hills, and it's far abide new, on D-side near Aboyne, or Abine as it's called. Kent for the river, mountain and forest, royal personages and great big castles. The North East corner has seen a huge change in the last 50 years, let alone the last century. It's no longer the International Centre for Oil Exploration. At a time, there was more crofts in the North East than in many parts of the crofts and counties in Scotland. That's another story for another time. But the North East, to me, is a special place, and I can't mind a time when I wasn't aware of the language, its song, its music, and its special humour. I was brought up hearing the language, delighted to go in long walks with my grandfather, hearing about his croft and his life there, and the one of his Scots words that to me sounded like music. I spoke nothing else until I went to the school. I spoke nothing but North East Scots, and quite a lot of it, apparently. Doric was at a time the name given to the Scots language spoken in different parts of Scotland, all the Scots-speaking areas of Scotland. But it's now referred to, as I said, as the dialect spoken in the North East, or as I prefer to call it, a vibrant branch of Scots. But I spoke Doric until I went to primary school at the age of 5, and there I encountered a new and magical world that contained new and magical sounds, the English language. So press a fast-forward button and get to the part where I become a broadcaster, because I'm going to take you on a journey this morning, the journey that has led me to the conclusions and lessons I've learned, not only in broadcasting, but in broadcasting in Scots, for Scots Radio. 7 years ago, I set up Scots Radio, broadcasting my first episode in December 2013, an idea that came from Michael Hans, the then director of the Scots Language Centre. And 7 years later, still enjoying making Scots Radio and video, new with the support of the Scottish Government, and in the first few years supported by Creative Scotland. Let's start with the nuts and bolts. Scots Radio. It's a monthly online audio programme produced to broadcast quality that is presented by myself and often studio guests in the Scots Language. Each episode lasts roughly an hour and follows a magazine format. Interviews with contributors for many different sides of Scottish life, showcasing the best of the living traditions and contemporary events, interspersed with music, tracks for the Scottish releases and links for the studio. As part of this strand of work, we produce extended special feature items, and these ensure we capture current events and offer extended interviews with personalities in the context of a particular initiative. Well, radio programmes and videos have a devoted and steadily increasing audience and feature in the Scottish working world theatre, music, trad arts, cultural politics, current affairs, sports, recreation, environment, food, engaging with and encouraging content for Scots-speaking communities across Scotland and beyond. With radio and video, we're continuing to try to normalise the language and feature folk using Scots, and if they didn't use it, they understand me or our reporters using it and asking questions in Scots. That's an important point. We are constantly extending our reach into different sections of Scottish society. The feature may be a news story, but the subliminal is important. We hear the language being spoken naturally, whether it's the interviewer or the interviewee. Training and development of our team members is paramount to the ongoing success of Scots Radio. And after 7 years, I have gathered a wee team of radio reporters, video makers, and IT members, and I'm awfu' proud of them. My studio engineer, Richard Werner, for B&B Studios, kent as our soon sorter, looks after the knobs and sliders. And we record the programmes in the studio in Pilrig Street in Edinburgh every month, recorded, as we say, to a BBC audio standard. And on that note, Scots Radio has been nominated for an excellent award 3 times in the Celtic Media Festival. In this international festival, we are competing with programmes for BBC and RTE in Celtic countries throughout the world. We'll hear whether we mark a 4th time in April. The festival this year is being held in Brittany. And we are delighted to be part of that gathering. And amongst folk who are aware of the importance of broadcasting in their native Celtic languages. And I've been so privileged to be made an Andre Gael by my Gaelic-speaking companions, and I have appreciated their support and their encouragement. Again, another important point there. So Scots Radio, to complete the picture, I intersperse the features with chosen tracks for recordings of the amazingly talented Scottish traditional musicians. So there you have Scots Radio. Add to that our video section and our Doric Film Festival team. That's our special project. And you get the gist of the setup. But what is it I actually do when I produce programmes? A producer is the Ian who decides on the content of the programme and has a notion of about 4 things hang together. In other words, I net programmes. I like to say that Scots Radio contains the rich tapestry of Scottish culture in all its colours. We ging as far north, south, east and west as our lugs will take us, from Shetland in the north to the borders and Athing in atween. Skip back a few years and I'm working in the education department in Edinburgh. We're amazing folk. I was working with poets, writers, actors and great folk for our Scotland. Then for some strange reason, my mentor and manager, the late great Roger Mortimer, asked if I'd like to come back up to Aberdeen again to do a 6-month attachment to help out as producer-presenter of Scottish Farming News. Scottish Farming News. I've come from poets, writers and poets nothing. Because, apparently, I kent about the culture in the North East. I dinna. Nobody does. And that turned out to be one of the most enjoyable but most demanding time in my broadcasting career. The entire gamut of life was in the farming programme. Producing and presenting a farming programme twice a day, 5 days a week, it was a big tack on, with topics relating to food production and environment and programmes relating to the health of a nation. 5 years later, I was still producing Scottish Farming News, I loved it. I loved hearing the working farmers at the roups and the sales and the meetings, hearing the voices and the accents for our Scotland, being part of the land and the land part of me. That job gave me a passport to the world. Nicaragua, India, Israel, Malawi, Spain. And I have been a privileged broadcaster, and experienced the charm and hospitality of strangers all over the world. There was land and environmental issues away, and I got to hear and see what folk were doing to keep their culture alive, and the pride folk had in their language and their culture. As I said, in that particular post in the farming programme, I had to be the presenter and the producer. And at that time, we were sent to London a few times for production and presentation coaching to Spickrecht. I had my vowels elongated. Hello, welcome to BBC Radio Scotland and Scottish Farming News. I was delighted with myself. My vowels were well stretched. In my farming role as producer, I was invited to attend the first AGM of the New Scottish Crofters Union, where there was a buzz about all things Gaelic. Just about that time, there emerged one of the most important aspects of the Gaelic revival, the Gaelic College in Skye, the island of Skye, or Solomorostig, and the creation of a new Gaelic media course. A few years later, the BBC doors opened, and in walked what seemed to be a huge wave of newly qualified, talented Gaelic-speaking producers and presenters, for predominantly Solomorostig. They made their present Kent, and the BBC, through BBC Alba and Radio Nangale, is all the better for that development. So now I come to the present day and Scots Radio. And for what I've been saying, you might think, there's nothing coming out there. What's our problem? Scots Radio and video's doing fine. I bit. There's I and I bit in my language. We are and we're nae. In fit why nae? Well, we're nae getting out the bit. We have just been through our annual outbreak of Burns Suppers, a unique and rich outpouring of one of his speeches about our national bard, Robert Burns. Full many speeches at the hundreds of Burns Suppers in Scotland were delivered in Scots. Guy few, I would propose. Have we reached a point for most of us in Scotland have to use a glossary when we read the poems of our national bard? It's just nae good enough. Is the Scots language being cultivated for only certain intellectual purposes? If so, full long can that continue without it being used only for sentimental or academic purposes? But it must be remembered that we are dealing with a delicate, sensitive subject. Even my generation is still absolutely fresh for an intensive system of education in fit our own language had nae place. When I first started Scots Radio, quite a few of my ex-BBC colleagues offered some help doing interviews. Problem was, the minute they turned on a microphone, they went into English. We lacked the confidence to speak in our own language. But things have changed in the 7 years. I've done Scots Radio for the 7 years, as I said. And it is important that we steer a very delicate path through to the next stage, or we're going up the wrong drill. And that's for my fairman friends. And not to ignore my fishing friends, there's a saying, a rising tide floats many boats. Well, that's true. But what we have at the moment is many boats are tied to their own anchor. There's a lot of work going on our Scotland to promote writing in Scots, publishing books in Scots, publishing Scots poetry, and that's all to the good. I love it. But I'm concerned that we haven't got to grips with speaking in Scots and hearing Scots being spoken. Despite great literary achievements, the spoken language continues to struggle. A language canna live only befits written in it. We need to hear it. And you might think, well, that's where Scots Radio comes in. Well, it does. But we need to steer onto the next stage. But we haven't got a Solomorostig or a media training centre for Scots broadcasters. Remember the parable of Solomorostig and the rise in trained Gaelic speakers. Scots speakers didn't hear Scots speaking TV channel. We didn't even hear a regular Scots programme on BBC Radio Scotland. And please note, I'm not speaking about one-off programmes, as we call it, about the Scots language. I'm speaking about a regular strand, a weekly programme in the Scots language. A strand. And fit, why have we nae got in? Back to the floating boats. We're nae joined up. We dinna hae a cohesive, joined up plan for the promotion of Scots language in Scotland, and in particular, this part of the plan, the spoken bit. I can train as many students as I like, but at the moment, they've nae way to gain in the bigger media world in Scotland. And until we get out of the bit, we're going round in circles, missing out, fit is to me the most important part of the language, speaking in it, and letting folk hear it being spoken. I've proved it can be done with Scots Radio, and I've proved it can be done in a broadcast quality that can use the template and be easily added to a schedule. We want to get ambitious broadcast trainees to pioneer the Scots language if we didn't have a programme or a reason to develop their skills. I thought a future, Scots-speaking broadcasters wouldn't develop their skills at all. Listeners want to hear Scots being spoken as it should be, a thought the piton or artificial notions. Raise the confidence and you'll raise the place of Scots in its future. So, ladies and gentlemen, I reach my conclusion. I hope by giving you an insight into some of my journey towards 66 episodes of Scots Radio. We've just recorded our last on Thursday, and dozens of videos. I present a case founded on experience. I'm not presenting a case saying I ken nothing, but just I've given you a wee insight to some of the experience I've had over the 37 years now. I think we have a moral duty to preserve the Scots language. But we cannot do it without a cohesive plan, a joined-up plan. We need to join up all the floating boats. We've made huge strides in introducing Scots into the school curriculum. We had great writers and poets. We enjoy academic discussion and debates about standardising the spelling, but the missing part is hearing the spoken word in conversation. Hearing it as part of a normal conversation. Radio and TV, they had the missing part of the cohesive plan. National radio and national TV. Having gained this far on the journey, 7 years down the line with Scots Radio, speaking to a lot of folk from our Scotland and beyond, I think that now is the time. We are standing at the crossroads of change here in Scotland. And we could lose our language. Digital communication could be the nail of parting day, or the saving grace. This time we are standing at the crossroads with microphones, cameras, and so many ways of communication, and communicating with the world. And we need to grasp this moment with both hands and pull the sweetest flowers. Leave other leaves to them that please, the present time is ours. The future is going to be challenging, but there's no doubt in my mind that we need to have a bigger share of the media for the Scots language. Fit treasures we have to speak about. And yet, Scots Radio remains the only regular Scots-speaking programme that can be heard in Scotland. The mindset is right. We have managed to ride the tides of change that come rolling in towards us through the centuries. I realise, like so many others, that language has to undergo change because it is alive. We have a past, we have a present, and I hope that Scots Radio will continue to play a part in the future of the Scots language in Scotland. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I will now take questions. You're asking if Scots Radio is the only consistent Scots radio broadcasting in Scots. Is that right? TV and radio.
Yeah,
okay. Yes, that is the answer to that. And it's such a shame because I could produce a program every week on what's going on culturally and heritage. And I'm not just talking about the higher culture, you know. I'm talking about ordinary working lives of people featuring in the programme. We just recorded a new programme, episode 66 on Thursday, with Gerda Stevenson and Simon Toomere. And Gerda's talking about her work with the Victoria Primary School in Edinburgh, writing a new song that they're going to perform, 160 pupils are going to perform, based on this is the year of coasts and waters. So the song is all about the part of the Edinburgh that they come from, New Haven, which has got a glorious history of sailing and fishing, etc. And she's also talking about a new book coming out about Lady Nairn, a fantastic songwriter who wrote songs like The Rowan Tree. People don't know about this. They want to hear these stories. And of course, if you're in the studio with storytellers like this, you're in amongst magical moments. And I want to share these magical moments with, I would say, 3/4 of the Scottish populace would love to hear these programmes. I can push it. I can push it as far as I can on Facebook or SoundCloud or YouTube. And then you're going into the discussions or the decisions about whether you push it further and let it go further, but who then owns your content? And we're going through all of this problem with content, etc. The only way forward to me is to get a programme not entirely like Scots Radio. It has to be tweaked. I mean, it has to be fitted. But the Scots Radio template could be fitted into the Radio Scotland schedule right now. And that's where we could let people hear what else is going on in Scotland. We have listeners all over the world, from Russia to Africa to Mexico to Canada to the States to France. Yes, we are worldwide. You're asking what is my opinion about the image of Scots. Is that correct? I was about to say, well, you could see right in front of you how cool I am. You know. And that's a very important point, believe it or not, the image. And I'm privileged to have a great team who all are good looking. And I think, and it is an important point that we present to the world something that is new, something that is maybe with a great deal of respect for what's going on in the past. But the image now in Scotland is very encouraging, really encouraging. The image we've got is this is a new thing. This is a trendy thing to do, to speak Scots. This is why the time is right. And Michael Dempster will tell you later on about how it's been affecting the social media side of things and how people are twittering and texting and tweeting in Scots as well. They're Scots. I'm just tweeting in different types of Scots, but it's being used, and I'm delighted with that. The Dark Film Festival last year had 11 schools, with Bairns fae, 11 schools out of the northeast, and they were up for it. I asked Abdi to come. We had 11 schools, 11 individual entries, and eight community groups as well. So they all had to make a film about the northeast in 5 minutes in Doric. Well, speak about pressing a button. And I asked them to come in their Oscar garb, their film star garb, to the Belmont Cinema in Aberdeen, and we had a red carpet for them all. And you can see, if you go into the Doric Film Festival webpage, you can see the Bairns arriving in their tiaras and their And we had 5 sets of camera teams set up throughout the building for them coming in. We were filming them coming in, and you can hear them saying, "It's the paparazzi." And they were up for it. They were just superb. The whole lot of them dressed up. Everybody dressed up in their bow ties, everything, tiaras, blah. The image was right. I have no fear about the image of Scots in Scotland after that. And we're pressing it ahead with another one this year. And again, the feedback is good. I've got trainers going out, my own team. Poor things, you would think I was making them work hours the night and day. I do. And they go out into schools, into community groups, and helping them do their storyboarding. We're using storytellers for the North East, the Storytelling Association of the North East, to go out into schools to help them with their storyboarding. And we've got the storyboarders, we've got the technical folk with the filming folk. So we're taking it into the 21st century. All of a sudden, Scots is in the 21st century. It has been, but we had to tell the birds at West as well. And they are so up for it. You should see these films they produced. I was so proud. And that day in the Belmont Cinema with invited guests and everything, we had the musicians playing for them, coming up to get their prizes, and the speeches, and thanking their mums and dads and everybody for the support they've been given. It was a day to remember, and we're hoping to have another day like it on the 30th of June, so it's all set up for that. So all systems go for that new. Any other questions? Okay, the question is, if it has been the catalyst or the changing point, if it's changed to make Scots a cool thing to learn and speak, is that correct? It's a good question. There was almost like a turning point in the 7 years that I could see that nobody spoke it on the radio or TV, and then suddenly folks started saying words. Folks started using phrases on radio and TV. And it all come together. There was like a synergy that happened, that folks started to use phrases in their normal conversation. And then there was a lot of programs on TV. They didn't use Scots language all the time, but they had phrases in that as well, but they started to use phrases. And I think it's a lot to do with going back to image again. There's folks standing up on their hind legs, able to say, "I speak Scots," without anything being ashamed or embarrassed about it. I speak Scots, I would say, 90% of the time, up in Aberdeenshire, with my neighbours, etc., etc. But having been broadcasting in English for 30 years, we've all got switches. This is the lovely thing. We've all got little switches in the back of our heads that bounce about from Scots to English quite happily. And it's not a problem. And there was a kind of feeling for a long time that if you spoke your Indigenous language like Scots, it would hold you back in life. Well, I don't think it's held me back. Maybe I could have been wealthier, maybe, but I've had a very rich, colourful life through broadcasting in English. Now I'm broadcasting in Scots, and I wouldn't have swapped it for the world. I think things like that happen, that we are now proud. We're proud to stand up and say, "I am a Scots speaker." Question is, if YouTube could play a bigger part in this, I think I paraphrase that. Funnily enough, we're doing a lot more videos this last few years. And the videos are going down really well. In fact, one of the videos that's really doing well, I delight in just, as I said, speaking to folk about what they're doing. That's what Scots Radio does. We speak to folk in the language, not about the language. Every now and then we have to speak about the language, but I prefer to speak in the language about what they're doing. And we've just made a video about 340 women up in the northeast, the Fraserburgh area, so that's the fishing area, have just taken up golf. And you think, what's that got to do with Scots? So they speak to me. Well, me and Graham, my cameraman, were out in a really frosty calm night in Fraserburgh at the driving range in golfers. And there was a class being taught there by Peter Miles, the professional. And there's an organisation called Love Golf. So we went in with cameras and everything, spoke to the women that were learning how to play golf. And they were so enthusiastic. They were so up for it. They said, "Just give it a go. We were all rubbish. Just everybody else get out there and give it a go." And they spoke in their own language to it. And I was speaking to them in my own language, the same language, about golf. That's what makes it. And they were all really smart-looking women. and there was me in my owl jacket and my hat, talking about image. But it was a really lovely, that was one of the most popular videos we've done for a long time. And then we go for that to, we have an annual guest lecture in Scots Radio, and this year was Billy Kay, and he spoke for an hour about the history of Scots, so we could speak about Scots as well. That was hugely popular, and he spoke the whole way through in Scots. And we can go for that. We're just about to do a thing, a video, me and Graham again, we're doing, visiting David McGovern and Maniki Rock Art. Now, David's making a special picture big stein for the Arbroath celebrations. And it's a stone for St. Vigians. And you should see what David's doing with steins. And he's making new picture steins. David's a Scots speaker. He speaks to me in Scots. We're speaking about the new picture stein and what St. Vigians are about. And why he's pushing back the boundaries of art, if you think, and pictish art. Maybe the historians didn't think it's valid because it's not ancient. But David said, no, this is a valid pictish stein. That will go up. I'll edit that on Monday. You'll see it going up, and the steins and the art that this man creates is fantastic. And you can feel our enthusiasm. So we're taking folk into realms of the Scots heritage and culture, but we're doing it in Scots. And some folk didn't even notice we're doing it in Scots. But that's when we can, we're doing the thing right, when we're doing our job right, because it sounds so natural. Yes?
Venture a deliberately leading question. Do you envy your opposite numbers broadcasting in Welsh, or is it not a fair comparison?
It's not a leading question. I'll paraphrase. Do I envy my colleagues broadcasting in Welsh? Is that correct? Yeah. No, I support them all broadcasting in their own languages, as I support my Gaelic friends broadcasting in their languages. They are way ahead of us. They got themselves organised. It's back to this joined up thing, the floating boats again. And they got themselves organised. And you cannot envy that, but you can try and emulate it. And that's what we're trying to do. And I get a lot of support for them. I hope that answers your question. Yes, the gentleman at the back.
Yes, thank you. So I was wondering what was the degree of political support to the Scots language? For example, I can see the logo of the Scottish Parliament or government, and it's typically translated into Scottish Gaelic, I suppose, but I don't see any Scots there.
Gentleman wants to ken, fits the level of support for the Scottish government for Scots language. Yesterday, the Scots government just published their culture strategy for Scotland. I recommend you all read this because it's a great document. I'm supported by the Scots government, and they support me to the hilt what I'm doing, because they can, I'm spreading it different directions. But I would say that we are lucky in Scotland to have the support we've got. And again, the Scots Radio and the Doric Film Festival and the Doric Board are mentioned in that document. We're getting there. There's a lot to be, we've come a long way along that road, but we've still got a long way to go yet. And that's a good place to finish. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time.